Pontiac Aztek 1999, symbol of a design failure. When it comes to the worst cars of the 1990s, it's hard not to start with the Pontiac Aztek. Although it was officially released in 2000, its design and development began in the late 1990s. This crossover is an example of how a design flaw can ruin even the most daring ideas of an automaker. Design, from futurism to nightmare. The Aztek was conceived as an innovative crossover for active youth. It was planned to be stylish, practical, and convenient for camping, but the final appearance of the car caused not delight, but shock. Angular lines, odd proportions, and headlights reminiscent of insect eyes made it an instant target for ridicule. While the concepts looked promising, the final design was greatly simplified due to budget constraints and pressure from management. Build quality and reliability. The Aztek not only looked bad, but also suffered from numerous quality problems. Plastic body panels quickly faded in the sun, and the interior felt cheap and flimsy. Many owners complained about unreliability of engines and transmissions, as well as frequent breakdowns of electronic systems. These problems made the car a bad buy even for its narrow audience. Market failure. The Pontiac Aztek sold so poorly that it became a symbol of failure for the entire Pontiac brand. Of the planned 75,000 cars in the first year of production, only about 27,000 were sold. The car was so disliked by the public that its mention became synonymous with design failures. Legacy of failure. Today, the Aztek is seen as a curiosity. In some ways, its cult status has been cemented by its bad reputation. It even appeared in the popular TV series Breaking Bad, where it became the face of Walter White's character, a symbol of ordinariness and defeat. The Pontiac Aztek is a lesson for the entire automotive industry. A good idea and innovation are worth nothing without quality execution and a proper understanding of market needs. Ford Aspire, 1994-1997, symbol of low-budget disappointment. The Ford Aspire, which hit the market in the mid-1990s, was positioned as an affordable, economical car for city dwellers. However, instead of becoming a popular compact solution, it quickly became a symbol of the compromises and shortcomings inherent in low-segment cars. Developed on a Mazda platform, the Aspire was a redesign of the Ford Festiva's predecessor, but was even worse in many ways. Design, from modest to faceless. The Ford Aspire's design was as simple as it could be. It looked small and inconspicuous, with rounded shapes that made it look dated even in its production years. Its appearance didn't stand out on city streets or in parking lots. The body looked fragile and the wheels were small compared to the overall proportions. The car didn't evoke any emotions other than indifference, which was a problem in an era when compact cars like the Honda Civic or Toyota Corolla were starting to win over buyers for their style and individuality. Power, weak engine, and mediocre dynamics. Under the hood of the Aspire was a 1.3-liter four-cylinder engine, producing a modest 63 horsepower. Despite the fact that the car was light, its dynamics left much to be desired. Acceleration to 100 kilometers per h took about 16 seconds, which made it one of the slowest cars of its time. The Aspire had difficulty overtaking on the highway and often became an obstacle in the flow of cars. In addition, weak suspension and vague handling added to the discomfort of drivers. At the same time, even the declared fuel economy figures did not meet expectations. The Aspire consumed more gasoline than more powerful and spacious competitors. Build quality compromises everywhere. The quality of materials in the Ford Aspire was consistent with its budget positioning. The interior was made of cheap plastic that began to creak and crack over time. The seats offered minimal comfort and were ill-suited for long trips. The dashboard looked dated even by 90s standards. In addition, the Aspire suffered from corrosion, especially in northern regions with harsh winters. Safety, design flaws. The Ford Aspire was one of the first compact cars to offer airbags as standard. However, this did not save it from poor crash test scores. In the event of an accident, the Aspire's bodywork demonstrated weak protection for the driver and passengers. Many owners complained about brake problems, which only made matters worse. Market failure. Despite its low price, the Ford Aspire failed to win the hearts of buyers. Even in the budget segment, it was not competitive enough. Higher quality models from Japanese and Korean manufacturers, such as the Toyota Tercel or Hyundai Accent, offered a better combination of price, quality, and reliability. Ford quickly realized its mistake and discontinued the Aspire in 1997, replacing it with more successful solutions. Chevrolet Lumina APV, 1990-1996, a spaceship with earthly problems. The Chevrolet Lumina APV, released in the early 1990s, was supposed to revolutionize the minivan world. General Motors hoped that the car would be able to compete with such successful models as the Chrysler Town & Country and Ford Aerostar. However, despite its futuristic appearance and ambitious plans, the Lumina APV turned out to be a failed attempt to attract buyers in the family car segment. Instead, it went down in history as an example of how an excessive emphasis on design can result in a failure in convenience and practicality. Designed between futurism and caricature, the Chevrolet Lumina APV earned the nickname Dustbuster due to its long, tapered front end and aerodynamic shape reminiscent of a handheld vacuum cleaner. The car looked like something out of science fiction, which initially attracted attention, but soon became the subject of jokes. While minivans looked familiar and appropriate on the road, the Lumina APV seemed awkward and odd. The steep windshield angle created an unusual feeling behind the wheel, but also created problems. Passengers and drivers often complained about the glare from the instrument panel. In addition, the massive plastic body panels, which were conceived as a progressive solution, faded and lost their appearance over time, turning the car into a peeling alien. Interior, spacious, but without comfort. The Chevrolet Lumina APV promised a spacious cabin suitable for large families. However, the car's interior quickly disappointed. The trim materials looked cheap, the seats were uncomfortable for long trips, and the dashboard had an illogical arrangement of buttons and controls. Although the car could seat up to 7 passengers, they felt cramped, especially in the back rows. Plus, the rear seats were heavy and awkward to remove, making transforming the interior for cargo a tedious task. In an era when buyers expected MPVs to be flexible and practical, the Lumina APV simply didn't measure up. Performance: weak engine for big ambitions. The Chevrolet Lumina APV was equipped with a 3.1-liter V6 engine producing 120 horsepower. For a minivan that weighs more than 2 tons, this was clearly not enough. Acceleration to 60 miles per hour took forever, and trying to overtake someone on the highway was fraught with risk. Later, Chevrolet tried to fix the situation by adding an optional 3.8-liter engine, but it did not save the Lumina APV from the reputation of a slow giant. In addition, the car's handling left much to be desired. A high center of gravity and a lack of stability made the Lumina APV uncomfortable to corner. The suspension could not cope with poor roads, and the steering felt vague, making driving less enjoyable and tiring. Security: ambition without implementation. Despite GM's efforts to market the Lumina APV as a safe family vehicle, crash tests showed otherwise. The car scored poorly for occupant protection in side and frontal impacts. Its long windshield, while futuristic in appearance, created additional risks in the event of an accident. Buyers who expected a high level of safety from a family vehicle were disappointed with the Lumina APV. Reliability issues. The Chevrolet Lumina APV suffered from a variety of mechanical problems. Owners often complained about engine overheating, transmission problems, and cooling system malfunctions. Electrical systems, including windows and central locking, failed even with low mileage. These problems, coupled with expensive maintenance, made the Lumina APV a financial burden for many families. Market failure. Despite GM's ambitious plans, the Lumina APV failed to compete with the Chrysler Town & Country, Dodge Caravan, and Ford Windstar. Sales were low, and the car quickly became outdated against more modern and reliable competitors. In 1996, Chevrolet finally discontinued the Lumina APV, replacing it with the more traditional venture. Dodge Neon 1994-1999, disappointment. Beneath the bright facade. Introduced in 1994 as a compact car for the mass market, The Dodge Neon was intended to compete with Japanese models, such as the Honda Civic and Toyota Corolla. Chrysler Group invested heavily in creating a bright, memorable brand to attract younger buyers. The car's tagline, "Hi," hinted at the car's friendly and approachable nature. But behind the attractive facade were numerous problems that kept the Neon from staying on top. Design, bold but short-lived. The Dodge Neon stood out with its fresh and bright design. Rounded lines, characteristic smiling headlights, and a variety of bright colors made it attractive to young people. The car's appearance perfectly matched the spirit of the 1990s when unusual and catchy design was in fashion. However, over time, problems began to appear. The paintwork quickly lost its shine, especially when exposed to the sun, and body parts quickly began to rust due to the low quality of materials. What seemed new and stylish soon began to look outdated and cheap. Interior, savings in everything. The Neona's interior design reflected its budget positioning. The plastic on the dashboard was hard and creaked with every movement. The seats were uncomfortable for long trips, and sound insulation was almost non-existent. Drivers and passengers often complained about engine and road noise that penetrated the cabin. In addition, the interior ergonomics left much to be desired. Many owners noted the inconvenient placement of buttons and levers, as well as poor build quality. Door handles and climate control elements often broke even with careful use. Performance, fast, but not for long. One of the Dodge Neon's biggest selling points was its engine. The base model came with a 2.0-liter four-cylinder engine that produced 132 horsepower, which was a solid figure for a compact car of the time. The Neon boasted brisk acceleration and responsive handling, making it popular with younger drivers. However, these advantages were quickly offset by reliability issues. The engine suffered from oil leaks, frequent overheating, and premature wear. The automatic transmission was also a weak point. Owners often encountered jerks, slowdowns, and complete breakdowns of the gearbox. Security, the weak link. The Neon was marketed as a car for young families, but its safety record was disappointing. Crash tests showed inadequate occupant protection and frontal impacts, and the lack of standard side airbags made the car even less attractive to safety-conscious buyers. While competitors were offering more advanced safety systems, the Neon was left behind. Reliability, nothing but problems. From the first years of production, the Dodge Neon faced a stream of complaints from owners. Problems with the engine and transmission were accompanied by malfunctions in the electrical systems. The window lifters failed, the headlights burned out, and the dashboard electronics often failed. One of the most common complaints was poor sealing. Drivers reported that water often got into the cabin during rain or when washing the car, which led to mold and unpleasant odors. These problems were compounded by frequent breakdowns of the air conditioning system, which was extremely unreliable. The market path. The Dodge Neon started with great enthusiasm and good sales, but its popularity quickly waned. Competitors such as the Toyota Corolla and Honda Civic offered better build quality, reliability, and safety, making them the preferred choice for buyers. Even the aggressive pricing policy of the Chrysler Group could not save the Neon from falling sales. Although the Neon went through several redesigns, by the late 1990s, it had lost its appeal in the face of more sophisticated cars. The first generation ended production in 1999, and despite the launch of a second generation, the Neon has never regained the trust of buyers. Cadillac Catera, 1997-2001. Cadillac's little brother that let everyone down. The Cadillac Catera was conceived as Cadillac's attempt to enter the midsize car market, targeting younger buyers who wanted luxury at an affordable price. Based on the Opel Omega, the car was intended to be a response to competitors like the BMW 3 Series and Lexus ES. Instead, the Catera became a symbol of poor planning, unreliability, and disappointment for both buyers and the Cadillac brand. Design, faceless and inexpressive. From the start, the Catera didn't look like a typical Cadillac. Its design was adapted from the Opel Omega, giving the car a simple, understated appearance that wasn't at all associated with luxury. Classic Cadillac features, Angular lines, a massive grille, and a bold personality were absent. Instead, the Catera offered a rounded, soft silhouette that was lost among its more stylish competitors. The car looked bland, and while its design wasn't outright bad, it didn't evoke emotion, which was a failure for a brand that was used to being associated with prestige. Cadillac tried to attract attention with an advertising campaign featuring a cartoon duck, but this marketing ploy only reinforced the car's sense of frivolity. Interior, luxury that disappoints. Inside, the Catera tried to look luxurious, but the end result was rather mediocre. Leather seats, wood trim, and built-in technologies like cruise control and climate control were meant to attract buyers. However, the quality of the materials left much to be desired. The plastics looked cheap, and the assembly was flawed. The interior suffered from poor ergonomics. The controls were illogically placed, and some buttons were small and difficult to use. Space for rear passengers was also limited, making long-distance travel less comfortable. For a car marketed as a luxury car, such shortcomings were unforgivable. Performance. Problems under the hood. Under the hood of the Cadillac Catera was a 3.0-liter V6 engine producing 200 horsepower. Despite the acceptable power on paper, the car suffered from a lack of dynamics. Its acceleration to 60 miles per hour took more than 9 seconds, which was slower than many competitors. The car also had a soft suspension that was good for highway cruising, but made handling less sure-footed on twisty roads. The steering felt vague, and the brakes often overheated, reducing their effectiveness. For a car marketed as a sporty luxury, the Catera failed to live up to expectations in terms of performance. Reliability, eternal breakdowns. One of the main reasons for the failure of the Cadillac Catera was its unreliability. The car suffered from numerous mechanical problems, from the engine to the electronics. Owners often complained about oil leaks, transmission problems, and cooling system failures. Malfunctions occurred even at low mileage, which made the car expensive to operate. The electrical system was also a source of constant headaches. Power windows failed, engine sensors failed, and sometimes the climate control system failed entirely. For buyers who expected a high level of quality from Cadillac, these problems were especially frustrating. Market failure. The Cadillac Catera was launched with the hope of attracting a younger audience, but the strategy proved to be a mistake. Instead of competing with BMW or Lexus, the Catera was defeated even by more affordable cars from Toyota and Honda that offered better performance, reliability, and build quality. Sales of the car were significantly lower than expected, and by 2001, Cadillac decided to discontinue its production. Despite promotional efforts, including the famous duck ad, the Catera is remembered as one of the Cadillac brand's biggest flops. Oldsmobile Achieva, 1992-1998, the unassuming sedan that disappointed everyone. In the 1990s, General Motors sought to refresh its lineup of cars to appeal to younger customers and keep the Oldsmobile brand alive. One such attempt was the Oldsmobile Achieva, a compact sedan built on the N-body platform. However, despite its ambitions, the Achieva failed to live up to expectations and quickly became an example of how a mediocre car can ruin the reputation of an entire brand. Design: boring and outdated. The Oldsmobile Achieva, although intended as a car for young and dynamic drivers, looked outdated even at the time of its release. Its design was typical of the early 1990s. Angular lines, minimal chrome, and overall dullness. The car did not stand out either in the parking lot or on the road. The attempts to give the Achieva a sporty look in the SC and SL trims were especially ridiculous. Small spoilers and decorative stripes only emphasized its mediocrity. In an era when competitors like the Honda Accord and Toyota Camry offered sleek, modern solutions, the Achieva looked like a relic of the past. Interior, cheap finish, and inconvenience. The Achieva's interior was not up to par. The interior trim was made of cheap plastic that wore out quickly. The dashboard had an illogical arrangement of buttons, and the trim materials gave the impression of being cheap. Even in the more expensive trims, the leather on the seats looked low quality. The interior was cramped, especially for rear passengers, making the car uncomfortable for families. Soundproofing was almost non-existent. Drivers complained of loud engine and road noise penetrating the interior. These shortcomings created the impression that the car was hastily created and without taking into account the needs of buyers. Performance, more promises than real power. The Acheva was offered with several engine options, including a base 2.3-liter quad 4 and a more powerful V6. However, despite the good performance on paper, the real-world driving experience was far from ideal. The base engine suffered from vibrations and noise, and the automatic transmission often shifted with delays. Even the more powerful versions of the Acheva could not offer satisfactory dynamics, especially compared to Japanese competitors. The suspension was too stiff for a comfortable ride, but did not provide precise control in corners. Reliability, endless breakdowns. One of the main reasons for the Acheva's failure was its reliability issues. Owners often complained about engine overheating, oil leaks, and problems with the cooling system. The electrical system was also unreliable. The windows failed, engine sensors failed, and sometimes the instruments on the dashboard turned off completely. The suspension and brakes also often failed, making maintenance expensive and inconvenient. Many Acheva owners reported that the car began to cause problems within a few months of purchase, undermining confidence in the Oldsmobile brand. Market failure. Despite an aggressive advertising campaign and a low starting price, the Acheva failed to conquer the market. Not only was it losing out to competitors from Japan, but it also raised doubts among buyers loyal to American cars. Sales fell each year, and in 1998, General Motors decided to discontinue the model, replacing it with the Oldsmobile Alero. The Oldsmobile Acheva became an example of a car that failed to offer style, quality, and performance. Instead of strengthening the brand, it only accelerated its decline. Plymouth Prowler, 1997-1999. A bold experiment that failed. The Plymouth Prowler is a car that stood out from all others on the roads of the 1990s. Created as a tribute to the hot rods of the 1930s and 40s, it promised to become a true legend among vintage cars. Chrysler Corporation invested a lot of effort into the development of this car, trying to breathe new life into the Plymouth brand. However, despite its uniqueness and impressive appearance, the Prowler turned out to be an example of how form can prevail over function, which ultimately made it a failure. Design, show car on the road. The Plymouth Prowler's greatest strength was its design. The car looked like a modern interpretation of a classic hot rod. A long hood, exposed front wheels, rounded shapes and chrome details. It was a real show car, an embodiment of the creativity of Chrysler designers who drew inspiration from American car culture of the mid-20th century. Every detail of the Prowler screamed exclusivity, hand-assembled body, unique headlight shape, and bold decision with open wheel arches. However, despite the external shine, the practicality of the car was questionable. The narrow body and low landing made it impractical for everyday use, and the small trunk, in which a bag could hardly fit, further emphasized its role as a toy rather than a real car. Performance. Impressive looks, weak heart. Under the hood of the Plymouth Prowler was a Chrysler-sourced 3.5-liter V6 engine producing 214 horsepower, 253 GP for later versions. At first glance, that might have sounded good for a car of its size, but enthusiasts were disappointed. In an era when even standard sports cars offered V8s, using a V6 seemed like a compromise. The car was equipped with a 4-speed automatic transmission, which further diminished the driving experience. Hot rods are associated with power and drive, but the Prowler simply did not live up to these expectations. Acceleration to 60 miles per hour took about 6 seconds. Not bad for a car of this class, but far from impressive for its stated image. In addition, the Prowler's suspension was set up too stiffly, making it uncomfortable to drive on normal roads. For a car that was sold at a premium price, this was unacceptable. The Prowler felt more like a show car than a true sports car. Interior. Style without comfort. The interior of the Plymouth Prowler looked modern, but it was far from luxurious. Chrysler tried to give it a futuristic look, using aluminum inserts and a minimalist dashboard design. However, the trim materials were cheap, and the ergonomics of the interior left much to be desired. There was little space for passengers, and the seats did not provide adequate comfort for long trips. In addition, the instruments were poorly lit, making them difficult to read at night, and the build quality left much to be desired. For a car that was positioned as exclusive and stylish, such shortcomings undermined the confidence of buyers. Practicality, lack of versatility. The Plymouth Prowler was far from a versatile vehicle. Its low ground clearance made it unsuitable for rough roads, and its small trunk limited its travel capabilities. Despite the removable soft top, its installation was difficult and inconvenient. Owners often complained that even short trips turned into an ordeal. Additionally, high maintenance and repair costs further discouraged buyers. Even tire changes or minor bodywork required significant expenses, making the Prowler not a car for everyone. Market failure. Chrysler hoped that the Plymouth Prowler would become the flagship of the Plymouth brand and attract the attention of young and wealthy buyers. However, the reality was quite different. The high price, more than $40,000 for the base model, lack of practicality, and insufficient performance scared off most potential customers. Sales were so low that production ceased in 2001. Only about 11,000 cars were produced, which makes it rare but not successful. The Plymouth Prowler went down in history as an example of a car that focused too much on appearance, forgetting about the balance between style, performance, and convenience. It was a bold experiment, but unfortunately it failed.